Hi, my name is Benedict. This video is going to introduce and be the manual for Mini PD, a new Wii synthesizer sound maker, waveform creator from my good self, which will be available on Ko-fi on my account for a nominal fee. It's too hot to do anything, so no apologies given. Everything is open, fans going, you'll hear the neighbours, you'll hear everything. Not that important, because what's important is what we're doing here, which you will hear pristine. So here is an instance of Mini PD. As the name clearly gives away, it is a phase distortion synthesizer, phase distortion being the form that Casio built actually with, say, a meter and then put into a digital format with the CZ series. Sadly, they didn't really go much further with it. The VZ was closer to Yamaha's DX7 because it was vastly popular. I'd love to see Casio come back and put their code, I assume they still have that, into a VST, especially if the VST had options for both CZ and VZ running. But in the meantime, there are ways of building phase distortion, which is similar enough to FM but delivers a different result. The phase distortion, the CZ feel, compared to the Yamaha, the CZ feels rather analog-y, but in a nice, cheap digital sort of a way. So how will you get it? There will be a link down below off to my Ko-fi account. If you like what you see and hear here, think that it may be useful for you. And again, the main uses are, yes, it will run as a standalone synth, and so you can make cool sounds in your mix and work with them just as is, or you can be using it to create interesting waveforms which you either just straight sample off or sample off more evolving sort of stuff based upon its abilities, because how these oscillators move, how the DCOs change is unique to the phase distortion experience, particularly the Casio experience, and so then you can put them into grain or wavetable type synths. So its simplicity is deliberate. If you're looking for more, then carry it to somewhere which just has tons more. Being reason, then I would be looking at carrying it into primarily Europa, because that's my bag baby, but otherwise there are obviously NNXT, Mimic, and Grain. How you get it into your computer is simple, but you've got to do it the right way. You'll get a zip, you need to unzip that. Inside that will be a folder which says something like Mini PD VST3. Grab that whole folder and put it into your VST3 folder. Now, my understanding is that this should run on a Mac, but nobody's ever gotten back to me to say, yes, these things work just dandy on a Mac. They are a Universal VST3. I will probably say that it's Windows only, but once people start telling me that it does work on a Mac, then I will be far more open. I just don't want to sell it to people who then discover it won't run. Okay, so you put this whole folder in. Do not take any parts out. If you take parts out, it won't run. If it has not run, it means you took parts out of the folder. Just put the whole folder in the VST3 folder, which as a Windows user is in Program Files, Common, then in VST3. Put it in there. Preferably next to all the other Benedict Roff-Marsh VST that you run. If you have any support requests, you must ask here. If you send me private messages or fill in my form asking to work with me, but are really just trying to tell me your problems, I will not respond, or I'll respond unfavorably. Same goes for if you start writing me messages through Ko-fi. We keep it to this one place here. As you will see from my other devices, nobody ever needs any support. So it's pretty simple stuff. How it works. Okay, how we got this sound working, we'll run through just a little bit. Firstly, we do see these leapy-cheapy things. We'll come come back to what these do, but I'm just showing you the movement that's been embedded here. Take those out. Pure phase distortion loveliness. In terms of extra things that are happening, there is some EQ. Bringing out what I felt like I wanted to hear more of in that sound. We will turn that off. There is a couple of layers of end levelification. Like most digital forms, it does benefit a lot from adding chorus. This guy here is providing chorus and echo. Chorus and echo. As I always try and get across in mixing, it's better to do some here and some there, and you get something larger than if you tried to push everything out of one box. So we get this really rich sound, because what's happening is the movement that tape deco has is compounding the movement that 2020 has. So layers of things means that we can move from our very dry sound. Let's put that movement back in. To these really rich, evolving sorts of sounds. Now we will go to the heavier part of the manual as we work our way through. Don't need you any more, so we're going to run a mini PD and a little reverb. This just takes the edge off. I'm actually going to reduce the wetness because you end up hearing too much of it on headphones. Righto. So we've got this lovely green look. It's good to have a sense of humour. Our parts. We have the waveform itself, so digitally controlled waveform. I've borrowed the terminology straight off the CZ, so anybody who's familiar with a CZ is going to feel immediately a lot more comfortable with it. No, it does not emulate a CZ fully, partially why it's called a mini PD. Also because there are 3 oscillators, and guess what? A mini has 3 oscillators. Yeah, I know, I'm childish. So we've got our waveform creation, how we move that over time. So that's the DCF. It's in the CZ, it's all part of the DCW, but because I've also added an analog style filter, then I've used DCF and VCF. They are 2 separate things, but tied together. And then, of course, our digitally controlled amplification, which is our envelope and output. There's our main stages. We will start with the important bits, the reason for the season being our waveform. This is the default preset and the only preset that I'm providing, as I've spoken about. Well, I love making sounds. Everybody wants something different, and nobody uses the presets that I would give with this anyway. If you don't know what to do, then learn, and this will give you everything that you need to learn, and they've got other videos on how to make more interesting and cool sounds, but start slowly. Otherwise, if you know what you're doing, you don't need presets from me, you probably don't even want them. So we've got our basic oscillator. The way that it works is that you have several forms. Now these are just available through dragging. I considered showing the little list that's on top of a CZ, but anyone who knows a CZ knows them. You can get a picture of them online. I may even pop that up anyway. So your forms, your core, all sound suspiciously sine wavy. And this is because phase distortion is actually an additive form at heart. We choose something, which is a sine wave, we warp it until it becomes what we expect from the name. So the first ones are the expected, and there isn't a sine or a triangle offered simply because sine, triangle, or sine, triangle, depending upon what kind of a triangular triangulation you want to triangulate. Pulse doesn't behave like an analog pulse, but is surprisingly nice waveform, great for strings. Double sine, so these get a little bit more sciencey. Pulse and sine together. And then these resonant forms, because the CZ had no filter, they emulated the feel of a filter with resonance turned up by having resonant waveforms. Very cool. And while in certain ways they sound really horrid, they also sound absolutely wonderful when you get their use right. And probably make the CZs the first to really create this sort of virtual analog kind of a paradigm. Quite cool. So we create our waveform this way. We've then got a secondary oscillator, which we can use or not use. If the two match, they sound exactly the same. If the two don't match, we'll hear that the form changes. What this does is it takes form A and then adds form B after it. It doesn't put the two together like a Juno 106 or a classic analog type synth. It actually chains them. So it plays the saw, then it plays the square, it plays the saw, then it plays the square, which is why it seems to drop an octave. Because quite honestly, the waveform has become twice the length of what it was before. Odd, but that's what the CZ does, and you'd miss it if it didn't. If you really have a problem, you can raise. But note, it doesn't really feel the same. It is just a unique feature of phase distortion and the way it works. So you can chain these two forms together and get interesting things. So in theory, we've got an SH-101. In theory, there are some cool things, but it is a very unique form. So if you come into it expecting Jupiter 8, it'll never give you that, but it'll give you CZ pretty nicely. So work to the forms that you've got. If you are using this to create evolving forms for samplers and what have you, then you can simply say, okay, that's the waveform I want to sample off, and we're done. You can then throw Mini PD out of your door and move forward with your sample player, whatever that is. Or you can use envelopes, which we'll get to create some movement and on with the show. We can then, which we'll come back to later, use an envelope to change the shape. Look at it fly. We can change the octave. I've given you a pretty stupid range there for how far you can go. I'm running at 44k here. Higher things allow for a little bit less aliasing, but you will get aliasing. The CZ itself aliased like an absolute bastard, or at least mine did once you got up. It was a 4-octave keyboard, so once you got up to about here, which is C above middle C, a lot of times with bright waveforms, that was chewed up. It was just the nature of the beast. You can do an awful lot with this without getting too aliasy. There will be some you can oversample if you want. I just deliberately decided not to worry about oversampling here because I can either run my Reason at a higher sample rate, like at 88k, or a lot of DAWs, increasingly Reaper, I know probably are leaders in this, allow you to oversample each device or chain of devices. Apparently, according to someone, it's better to oversample one device than a chain, but don't know, don't care. Not a massive fan of oversampling. Everything has a cost, and I don't mean CPU. So, octave, huge range. There's no semitone, just don't see the sense in it. And then these, but from the default patch, are set perfectly to 0. Once you've wiggled them, they'll never go perfectly back to 0. I love that about synths, that you can't, if you can't get things perfectly to 0, it's cool. That's how you end up with difference. And then mixing is all driven here. How much of this am I pushing forward through the VCF if you are using the VCF? So multiple oscillators is where you really start to get fun. As you hear, we can tell that this is not quite where it used to be. I let it go to a pretty broad range, so we can set that one to nothing, go sharp here, even sharper here. That really sounds very, very nice. Of course, we can then mix and match forms. And we're starting to hear the kinds of grindy sounds used all the time in electronic body music, industrial dance. And I used this, my CZ, for EBM for quite a long time, and I was kind of renowned for how grindy my sounds are, and this is a lot of the secret for that. The CZ only had 2 oscillators, this gives you the 3rd, so you can get quite creative with the cool form of the way the CZ sounds. That's how we create our waveforms. Here, it is more complex than you're used to, but super cool. We'll turn these guys off for the moment. Now we're going to move to DCF. In the CZ, it's really all part of the DCW. The DCW has the ADSRs built in. Yes, in the CZ they are 8 points, which is cool, but a total pain in the ass to use most of the time. On the CZ's front panel, actually surprisingly nice to use once you get used to it, but it's still a little torturous and very uncomfortable in this environment. If you want to get into that kind of stuff, as you have seen, everything is modulatable. So in that case, you would find your MSEG of preference. If you're in Reason, then Europa has fabulous MSEGs. With a huge amount of control. If you want to dig right into them, assign it to this and it'll about as you command it to. Yes, you will go down to a kind of paraphonic use, but most times when you're doing that sort of thing, you're running in mono anyway, as in monophonic sounds. No, there is no mono. It will give you 16 voices or 16 voices. There didn't seem any sense in adding extra buttons that served minimal, if ever any valuable purpose. So we have our DCF. We'll look at the VC option later. Does nothing until we apply it here. So adding this does nothing, but here we have a very standard ADSR, pretty fast, and then slows down at the top. If, like me, you prefer longer things, then you are going to want to go straight up here before you get anything. But I know a lot of people will want really short and hard, in which case that's why I left this waiting on things. I will tend to want to go out here. But hear how the sound moves and changes with this. And while it feels analog-like, gives is unique and very, very cool. So this is merely changing our form here and manually moving this knob by magic. Obviously we can do 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And PD, CZs are wonderful for basses. So they've got a very nice balance of FM and analog all at once. Remember, Vince Clarke loved these. He basically prototyped all his songs on a bank of 8 or 10 CZs for quite some time through the 80s. At what point he let go of them, I don't know, but he had a rig, and it's not too hard to find pictures and videos of him talking about how that was done. They were that great. They were multi-timbral too, the first multi-timbral affordable thing. So you've got complete control over how your shape moves based on your ADSR here. But I know a lot of people are going to still want filters, in which case you can switch a filter on. It goes bright green to really let you know there be filter happening here. Now this still works. So with the filter fully, you will hear little to no difference as long as the resonance is down. It will get marginally brighter if your resonance is up. So we've still got a, let's accentuate that a little bit. One of the downsides of the CZ form is that the top of an envelope can be just a little hard. It happens in analog subtractive synthesis too, and we commonly put a second filter across it. CZ didn't have second filter, but we can do that there. So we can say, good, but just a little too hard. I'll just lop the top off. That's a 12 dB filter. You can swap to a 24 dB filter. Unique sort of sound. Let's just put this back to a pair of saws. So it's more the sound that you're expecting. So filter off. And then you can control this. So you can say, okay, I'll get rid of that entirely. I'll just run these like normal oscillators. And now you've got more of a analog synth type sound. But remember, you can actually be running the pair of them at once, and that's where the magic is intended to be. And that sounds really, really lovely as far as I'm concerned. So that covers all of our filter stuff. Then obviously we've got our DCA. We'll turn this off for the moment. Same envelope, fast to start with, slow as we carry on. Let's put this in. And when you find a nice balance, you get really nice tones. And remember again, you can either sample them off for use in wavetable, grain, or just straight samplers, or simply apply effects. Remember here, just that little bit of reverb alone. We'll turn this back up a little now. change our main level, we can pull it back a little bit. Most of the time you probably will want to put it back a little bit. And there is a pan knob. I have not tested this, but this is in theory set up for fancy MIDI stuff. But don't necessarily expect it to. If you have Bitwig, it may give you per note panning, it may not. It is not an advertised feature. If it does, brilliant. If it doesn't, you've lost nothing. It's not that hard to emulate that in the real world anyway. You simply use automation, and with a monophonic line that's not long like a pad, you'll get away with it. Long with pads, yes, it is nice, and I've played with it in Bitwig and it's kind of cool, but is it going to change the way I write a song? No. Which is why you don't hear that kind of stuff used an awful lot, and MIDI 1 spec is still dominant. So, DCA, output, panning. That's everything we need to create a sound, but of course we do want some movement. There is one LFO built in, and only one LFO built in, because I'm assuming you're going to be using a DAW. Well, you have to be using a DAW because this won't run without one of some kind. You need a host. And so the one LFO, like a CZ, is assigned straight to vibrato. So adding that little bit of vibrato, especially going into delay-based effects, really adds a nice warmth to this. And that will sit really lovely in a mix without doing the kludgy thing that a lot of analogs do, and a lot of pretend analogs where they just kludgify. You've then got to undo all the kludgification before you can get it to sit in a mix nicely, especially if the mix is a bit busy. So that's our LFO, and then reminder, we have these modulation slots. Obviously how that works is going to vary based upon your DAW. Bitwig's got lovely modulation, Reason has super modulation. As I noted last time, Cubase has now got modulation. I have not used it. I assume that Studio One, if they haven't killed it already, probably has modulation or will soon have modulation. So in this case, we've obviously just got to add something that wobbles and then send it to, yes, thank you, well, in this case, I'm just going to take the mod form, which is in number 2, so mod PD. You see there's wiggles. We can actually use this manually. I meant to talk about this before. You could, in theory, use this to... So if you're looking for a quick way to say, oh, I want a sort of master control for my things, let's say we had a sound doing this. And you're like, okay, that's all right, but it's too... or not enough. So it is a secondary feature of this, but primarily it's designed for this. We would normally set this to 50%, so it'll be whatever you had rotating around that. We can assign that to absolutely anything we want. Let's say DC. We really don't want to change waveforms, but we can. So if I want most things to stay where they are, that's doable. If I want just this one to wander, by mistake, sorry, sister's joke. We won't hear that very strongly, but if you want to analogify, then you can assign things to move around your individual knobs. So any knob here is movable. We just want to offer the couple that allow you to be more global. other one being this one that we saw before, which again is in 2 mod pitch. So we could just use a fairly subtle pitch, or even just get all kinds of interesting. With a little bit of movement. Put this VCF back in. It's a really interesting analogy sounding synth. Again, modulation, how it works, is going to depend entirely upon your DAW. Please don't ask me about that. That's a question for your specific DAW forum. Obviously the stuff I like doing, well, I'm a pad man, so we're hearing some of that really start to develop here. We might say, oh okay, let's go to a resonant wave here. And let's actually move that resonant wave, so it's going to be DCO3 PD, there we go, shape. Let's turn that off. Or I could go and let's add a little bit of echoey stuff to this. Which one will I go for? Well, we want to make it big fast, so let's go with an echo nest. Now, while I could make a sound reminiscent of this in, say, Europa, I can do anything in Europa once I know how it's done, it would not actually sound like this. It would behave like this, but it wouldn't sound the same. Partly because this is how phase distortion creates its sounds, it's odd. And partly because, obviously within the limits of the synth, here where I've got the tinkly sound, we listen to it just alone, we're changing our shape, but while I could move the whole oscillator in octaves, it's going to give a quite different sound. I could turn off the moving of the tuning, or even go with level itself. If I don't have that secondary thing, it sounds a little organ-like. Because it simply seems like a static overtone. Adding the movement doesn't take away the relationships with the harmonic series there. So we have to break it up somehow. Level breaks it up a little bit, but so does tuning a little bit. It's the decisions that get made because of the functionality of an instrument that define the results that you get. So we would get a more expected sound out of Europa because that's the way we would do it. We could emulate what's happening here in Europa and get closer, but even with the phase distortion oscillators in Thor, I don't think we'd get exactly this feel. And obviously what we do is going to be very much to taste. Let's give ourselves some vibrato. Again, just so you can hear, if we take, let's lift that just a little bit. Add in echo nest, which is a pair of echoes feeding 3 more echoes that behave like a reverb. Get this really rich sound. And then a little bit of that analog rooms back. Sorry, something is distorting. It doesn't surprise me. It's simply because I've come back and I haven't set up the masters just to try to save some otherwise wasted time. And we get really, really nice results from this. Again, any questions down below and down below only, please. If this brings something unique for you, brilliant, have at. And of course, if you've done things, use this very notably in a piece. Hidden in the background really doesn't help anyone, but if it's notable in a piece, link it down below. Get out there, have a really good day.